Well, we can't curse if we're not saying anything, so that's a solid beginning.
That is true.
I like it.
Our
I thought you were gonna-
encyclopedia is trying to live up to his name, and I'm trying to do the same thing, but
It doesn't always happen.
I'd wondered if you're going to continue with your little musical ditts, and that would be our open. I thought that would be nice. So if you didn't, so how dare you?
you got your own theme music. I'm so glad I was unconscious for all of that.
We should watch that again.
Always.
By we, I mean me. I'm gonna go watch that again.
Oh man, it is the 5th too. So there's another.
Oh yeah, there you go. So I can watch Emperor's New Groove and V for Vendetta back to back. What a tonal shift!
It just
blends.
Peanut butter and jelly, man.
I wonder if that's the movie that Andreas is watching, because he was all up and it's like, we have to watch it on November 5th.
He went to the movies for that.
I'm definitely
knowing him.
I definitely need to know which movie was worth missing the show for. So
well, he
now
previously
daylight savings time played into it, but
he previously missed a movie to go see a Dragon Ball Z movie in theaters. Like,
you're right.
Well,
he does have questionable choice. So. Yin and yang immediately.
Otherwise, we missed some birthdays. We have to wish happy birthday to both Jim and Harry, because they're not both on Halloween, but they're both really close to it. Or Jim's is really close to Halloween anyway, so why not?
The 26th, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's when I saw the tweet date anyway. But those both happened since the last show, so we're good. You know?
Yeah. So happy birthday to however old you are now. And now we're talking about the Merlin, if we can find some sources, or that's what the encyclopedia was trying to find.
The source is less important. I think everybody remembers the word of Jim. We were just having a quibble on if it was a recent word of Jim or if it was an ancient word of Jim. Ancient's probably too soon. It's not that old, but yeah. The idea was that the paraphrased quote is, somebody had asked him whose perspective would change our understanding of the Dresden Files the most, of like what's going on. And the answer was the Merlin, which is, spooky noises, right? Like, what the hell does the Merlin know that would blow everything wide open for us, So started thinking about that and started thinking about the Merlin as a person, and he probably knows tons of shit that nobody knows, especially because Harry's an idiot. So,
Yes. Does the Merlin know more than, say, Ebenezer, though? That's going to be part of the question, because we get information from Ebenezer to Harry, but we don't get often any information from the Merlin directly. We only see some things that he's doing sneakily. So like our view of him is also filtered through other people, and mostly just because they're on the opposite sides of whatever issue, because Ebenezer's on the side of Harry, and somehow Harry is almost always on the wrong side with Merlin.
With one key exception.
Yes.
Changes.
Maybe 1.5. Well, It was Turncoat really that they were working together. And on Changes, they were kind of on the same side, but not really allied, because as Harry was trying to get help from the council, he was told no.
But you still got to see him ready for war, which I think is important. That wasn't filtered through anybody else's lens,
right?
So yeah. But yeah, you get to see him try to use Harry and Turncoat. That's what you're saying, to try and
Harry happened to be the ace in the hole in that plan.
That's an interesting observation, because I mean that's one of the things I was going to bring up, right? It's summer night, isn't it? Our first council meeting, and Ebenezer basically tell him, like, look, he's going to come at you, straight. He's going to come at you from the side or with a cat's paw, and then he's going to have an ace in the hole, right? That's how he always operates. And I'll deal with the first two, but you're going to have to deal with the third one, or whatever it was, was his advice to Harry. And that's not just like oh, by the way, he's going to take a swipe at you right now. He's probably goes through his life like that. He probably, like, that's how he deals with everything, which is why Ebenezer knows, because he's seen it for 200 years. And so starting to think about that as his approach to literally every decision, and what that might reveal about some of his capabilities or his knowledge, like to the context of it, right? that kind of clued me into having this idea was a post on Reddit. Let's see, let's go grab that username. Hopefully it's work appropriate. Just kidding. Great Metropolitan, right? And it was in the subtext of a post from I was Forge 03. They were talking about, Harry being thrown out of the council, right? This isn't a knee-jerk reaction from the Merlin. He's been trying to throw Harry out of the council since always, right? Probably since, Ebenezer stopped him from chopping his head off, right? But if you think about ultimately what's going on, right? Like the Merlin knows what a Starborn is. He's got to know that Harry was suspected of being a Starborn, but that could go either way, right? So if Harry is a Starborn and also a Warlock, he's a Destroyer. It's very simple math, right? And if we can take him out before he even realizes what he is, what a coup, right? How great it is that we saved the whole world and all of known reality, right? But then you think about it, we're so far down the line, right? It's been another 20 years, basically, if not longer, in world. Merlin's tried to take him out how many times, one way or another, and then he just didn't help him hardly anything in changes because he didn't know any better any more than Ebenezer knew any better, right? And 2 days later, Harry Dresden walks off the battlefield in one corner, the entire goddamn Red Court. And in the other corner, Harry fucking Dresden, as far as anybody knows, right? They don't know he's got his Scoobies, 2 swords, etc. That won't come out until later. So he's got to know there's more going on, or he got lucky, or whatever. Name which of the senior council members has wiped out an entire race of vampires. Let's get a show of hands. So something else. Yeah, something else is going on. Maybe he is a destroyer and for some reason isn't coming for us. Maybe something is going on. But I think finally when we get to, like the end of Battlegrounds, like, yeah, he gets Carlos's, after action report. He gets to find out all of this stuff. But I think it's possible anyway that like one of the things is that it's out of his hands largely, right? The Merlin is stupid powerful. He's a political animal and that sort of thing. However, there are hundreds of other wizards that he has to cater to, because if he goes against the grain in that regard, they're going to depose him one way or another. And if they get rid of him, who's the populist on the senior council? Christos. And he's almost certainly Black Council, and that is really bad for everybody. And so he does what everybody wants, that the Merlin has appeared to have wanted to do the entire time, and he gets rid of Harry Dresden. But what does that really do to affect Harry? Fuck all. What is he? He loses like a couple of grand a month in residuals from being a warden. What else has the council ever done for Harry, right? Was one of the comments. They've basically never done anything. One of the comments said like, well, they showed up for the Dark Hollow. It's like, you don't understand. They showed up for the Dark Hollow and then they drafted him. They didn't do that for Dresden. They did that because it had to be done. And they literally sent every available warden, 5 of them, 6 of them, yeah. to help.
Baby wardens at that.
Right. Yeah. But plus the 2 big ones, the biggest,
Yes,
so.
Yes, they had 2 heavyweights and 4 baby wardens.
Right. And so ultimately, like, that doesn't count. That they didn't do anything for Dresden. The only thing they ever did was a stipend. Obviously, like, we have individuals, right? Ebenezer's obviously helped. The gatekeepers obviously helped. He helped him with paperwork. Very important.
Paperwork is important. Bureaucracy is a valuable skill. So says Ebenezer. Sort of what I tell myself.
Right. So you have these things. So I think the other flip side of it, with Dresden possibly being the ace in the hole or being the cat's paw in this case, he let Dresden off the hook, right? Rather than battle Dresden again, rather than battle public opinion, rather than all of this stuff, he just let it happen. Everybody in the council wants Harry out, minus a couple of people that are silent allies anyway and always have been. He just lets it happen, and Harry's off the hook. And what is Harry going to do? What Harry always does. He's going to go make a mess for the bad guys, right? But he's not beholden to the White Council's rules anymore. He's not, on and on and on. Like they have to tell him he is, right? But it's not like he has to sit down and get permission, and Lucio's not going to tell him no, and all of that little petty shit, right? Like he's going to follow the laws of magic almost certainly, and all of that stuff. But that's one of the ideas, right? Like this is obviously all speculation, but that's one of the like through lines that I kind of saw was like, oh yeah, like even beyond what the Merlin almost certainly knows, like, does he know about the gates? Does he know what's going on for the war with reality? He certainly knows what a Starborn is, but that's not special. There's at least a dozen people that know outside of Harry, possibly even more than that. So that's not special. So what is it that the Merlin knows? And then more importantly, what is it the Merlin can do? And how does he kind of operate? Because you're seeing his public face, but that's almost always like, if anything, that's him coming at you straight. And then, like take changes, for example, who's his cat's paw? Like was Harry the cat's paw or the ace in the hole, or was Merlin the ace in the hole because he had his fucking battle gear on? And he's like, yeah, well, they might accidentally take out Dresden and accidentally take out Ebenezer, and that would be bad. But after that, the whole fucking weight of the White Council is coming to bear.
Susan was his ace in the hole because he worked with the vampires to get Maggie stolen so that she would turn in the end. There you go.
That's dirty, but I am sickened and approve at the same time.
Like, I mean, he would. I don't think he did that, but he, right. That's on brand. That would work.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, it's what the author would do for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and it got rid of Susan, so that makes me happy.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, that's a thing. Like you got to think about it. This dude's got his plans. He's got wheels within wheels, to borrow a phrase from a different kind of thing.
It's. I mean, what Harry loses by being as part of the council is more of the. It's like what he talks about in Changes is the machinery and how it all just kind of works and moves in one flowing direction, which can help. From the Merlin's perspective, yeah, if he really wanted Harry dead, he could have showed up at the funeral and they could have thrown down rather than, sending Carlos to do it. Because at that point, well, I mean, still, it would have been an open confrontation that he probably wasn't going to take. But if he really wanted to hammer the point home, he could have done it himself.
Sure. Right.
There are ways to do that and make it more official, even as the leader of that group to the emissary of another group. So, Harry loses like his double quote unquote protection, but he also loses restrictions. So maybe that's a wash in the end, probably.
Well, and right. And that's, I mean, I was thinking about that as you started too. It's like, I guess he had technically relied on the cloak of being a member of the White Council, right? He does it in the first couple of books, especially. He's like, which organization I'm a part of. If you swipe at me, the wardens are going to come talk to you and whatever, even though he knows he's kind of the black sheep of the council. There are plenty of times, where that threat gets kind of thrown around. When do we see Bach Order Books is deadbeat, so he's not a warden yet, but he definitely threatens the specter of the wardens, right? So that part is gone. But on the flip side, now he's got to say like, oh, you really want to piss off Mab, because like on the one hand, anybody who knows that's not a threat because they're like, yeah, okay, you are today's flavor. That's not really a big deal. You're the flavor of the century.
Mab might throw away at night, which she won't. She will still answer the insult. So that is a better threat to give to anyone, because if Harry died in the line of pseudo warden duty, White Council might not do shit.
Right. Definitely wouldn't do shit. Individuals would do shit. Like Ebenezer with the satellite.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But I mean, that's been the threat before in the past too, right? Was that also Summer Night, where it's like, I mean, certainly Rashid like threatened him directly, but there was also like, if you screw this up, we're not coming for you, right? Like this is on you. You're not getting any support.
Yeah, he was going to lose his wizard status then, his council member status.
Right, and then he'd be
gotcha.
Then the vampires could do what they want to him, and that would have been
the vampires, the tigress, any of that. They would be able to get at him without reprisals. So that was trying to get out of it.
The other aspect is what we see in Turncoat, where, everybody's against him. And then the second Lara shows up, they go over to his side because at the end of the day, you still want Darth Vader on your team. Well, now he's just Darth Vader. So as far as the council is concerned.
And I think there might be a fair bit of that for the council at large, right? He is now too powerful, too dangerous, too scary, because like as smart as the wizards are, like as a unit and that sort of thing, like I think at the end of the day, like you got to think about it, like most of them are researchers still, or in that vein. They're not the wardens, right? Like at best, the wardens has been like 20%, 10%, whatever of like the council membership. So it's like there's a non-trivial amount of battle wizards out there, and certainly the researchers can still throw down, right? Or the ones that might be perceived or whatever. But there's tons and tons of people that are like, I don't want to risk my research. I don't want to risk my grants. I don't want to risk my, anything else that is like, that dude is making waves. He's a troublemaker. Just get rid of him already. You've got your guys with their fungus that they've been watching for 200 years. They can't miss, their next check-in in the next 20 years or whatever, I'm sure you still have some really laser focused, short-sighted in a sense, wizards, even though you're going to have the flip side of that, right? You got to imagine that they've got an oracle class that are like, are you guys fucking crazy? Like, would you just give him everything already? Or
that
whatever.
Was Chandler, according to Jim. Chandler is
right.
the one who had the ability to a little bit of foresight, but they were also very uncomfortable with him. They kept him very close, and now he's gone somewhere, and we don't know where. We don't know if he's coming back.
Yes,
he went in the hole.
He's on vacation. It's gonna be fine. So,
well, and it's also, so when Carlos delivers the threat, it's immediately are you going to come for me? No. Ebenezer is going to come for you because one, that's a show of some respect to his power, and two, it's well, who the hell else is going to do it? The Blackstaff.
Yeah,
right.
Ramirez is also unfortunately very crippled right now, so
Well, then he should get over it and stop making threats.
Right. He should pick up maybe a mantle that might heal it for him.
Yeah. And then become just like Harry? No, for shame.
No, he's just Morgan.
For shame.
Yeah. I want to break out the newspaper on that comment. No. We're not encouraging our friends to go get entangled with the Fae, okay?
Yeah,
we know better than that. He's still a friend just because he's being an idiot right now.
He's going to be a Denarian.
Ramirez is still one of my favorites, right? But this is definitely a low point for his character. Don't get me wrong. So, and the thing about human beings is you got to be able to give them a little bit of wiggle room. People are messy. They make mistakes. We all learn this from the Magic School Bus. So, you got to give them a little bit of room to grow and to figure it out. And it's not exactly helping that Dresden is continuing to Dresden. And he's going to be like, look at all the shit that I know. I know 3 things and hold it over everybody. It's like, yes, Dresden, lots of people know way more than 3 things. Like
what a fucking starboard is.
You special. Yes, exactly. Like Carlos probably knows what a starboard is. And like Harry's going to be like, hey, man, have you ever heard of starboard? It's like, you don't know what that is? And just be like, everybody knows what that is, Dresden. What did you miss that day? Like, what is it?
Mm-hmm. It's not plot relevant yet. Right. Except that it is very plot relevant.
It has been several times.
Right.
It could be that it is like Starpoint is probably actually restricted to the senior council or some people like that, considering comments from Summer Night, but they're all holding it against him and not telling him. And yeah, even all of the allies. Like Gatekeeper is an ally, but I'd say that when they show up at the island, it must have been Turncoat, and the Gatekeeper is like, you can't do this because you're just going to die in a very bad fight, so I'm going to stop you first. And that's when he had gotten the Intellectus. Is like the Gatekeeper is probably trying to protect him and make sure he's able to be that fulcrum as he needs to be, or worried that he's becoming the destroyer, as he was also willing to clean up in Summer Night. But no one's telling him these.
Well, at that point, he seemed more on board with Harry because he said it's not yet your hour. So he's not sitting there threatening to kill him this time. It's more of a no, you're going to get yourself killed, and I got shit that I need you to do later.
Right.
And then he steps on the island, and it's like, oh, well, okay, you solved today, but have fun with tomorrow.
I believe the line was more like, are you out of your freaking mind? Like, you took the island. Like, what's wrong with you?
That was another thing that Merlin knows about is the island, because that's at the end of that book is how, he's Ebenezer writes in his journal, we need to put him under immediate observation, and I think he's a moron.
Well, no, observing Harry is not the ridiculous part. Restricting Harry is where you're going to get into problems. But if you're just watching him and being in the know of what he's doing, that's probably actually a smart idea, because he's going to continue making messes, and then it's going to drag everyone else in.
Well, to be fair, I mean, Morgan was doing that, but he was very involved in the surveying aspect.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he would just poke his, like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, punch. What are you doing? Hey, punch. What are you doing?
Yeah, they sent a literal broadsword when they needed a scalpel. So, in that case, but light touch. So another image that comes to mind, though, with like everybody who knows what a Starborn is and watching Harry Dresden, it's like, imagine a baby somehow gets a hold of a hand grenade, and you don't stop to explain the baby what immense power it is holding. You say, all right, little fella, let me try and take that from you before anybody gets hurt, right? And that's probably like exactly how the council's been treating Harry Dresden, right? He is got dangerous power. Now, obviously, pointed in the right direction, it's tremendous power for good. But if he drops it at his feet, it's also tremendously bad for all of us, you know? And so that's one of those things, like, you don't go and explain, because we don't know what his choice would be. We're trying to remove his choice. We're trying to make sure, regardless of what happens, we don't get caught in the blast, accidentally or otherwise, right?
Well, see, that was always my problem with the microfiction when it came out, that now Morgan was recontextualized to know all this stuff, like what he was beforehand. And it's like, I'm sorry, if this is such a big concern of yours, stop poking him. You could be worried, but you don't. Now you're just actively pushing him in that direction every time.
Hey, the timer has started. Let's shake it. You know?
Seriously, it's like, how many ticks can I bring this down every single time?
Right.
That's just, you know, you understand someone like Langtry who just doesn't want the headache, doesn't want to take the chance. But so someone who's like, oh, I promised, or I respected his mother. I don't remember. Yeah, I think he promised Margaret something. And I have to read the microfiction again because it pissed me off so much that I ignore it. But so it's like, so you have all these feelings, you have all this knowledge, but it's still like, no, I'm just gonna poke.
Well, that is theory that they have with, like, how do you train someone? Well, do you throw baseballs? Do you throw stones? They have this historical idea of education of, you have to hurt the person you're trying to help so that they are strong enough to withstand both the good and bad emotions and the good and bad tactics. And that's might just be an issue of how they've grown up. And Lucio was not very kind to Morgan.
Yeah, if you think corporal punishment was bad in the last 100 years, like, imagine what it was like 200 or 300 years ago, right? But I mean, to me, like, I just don't think that Morgan had the emotional capacity to be what Harry needed him to be, right? Like, Morgan is this badass ancient cop, right? You know, that's Harry Dresden's like epiphany about Morgan's character, is he's been on a bad beat for 300 years type of thing. Like, Morgan probably just doesn't have the soft and tender left in him very much, you know? Whereas like Dresden was a child and could have used somebody like that, you know, certainly. So, you know, Morgan's got all the good intentions in the world, maybe, but he's still got scissor hands, you know, where
to me, it's just take the pragmatic approach. You don't have to be soft and kind. Just stop punching him with the hammer hands.
Yeah, leave them the fuck
just stop.
Yeah, right.
Don't do anything if that's your problem. If you can't be, if you're going to be biased, just fucking chill.
Right.
But I mean, that makes me think that they must know something that certainly we don't about the Starborn, that they were pretty sure that by hitting him in the face in, say, Summer Night, that he wasn't going to do epic destroyer level amount of damage, that they thought that he hadn't accessed that amount of power yet.
Well, but now it could easily be the excuse to just kill him at the time. I mean, I have no problem with the idea that Langtry was happy to just have his head and be done with it at least 5 different points.
Right.
And Morgan certainly was. I mean, the second he comes out and we meet him for the first time, he's got his sword drawn, like, be prepared to face judgment now. It's like, what the hell? I summoned a fairy.
Bound him, obviously. Yeah, I mean, the other thought, though, is like, they're headquartered in Edinburgh, right? So, like, maybe them poking him in Chicago is one of those, like, Chicago's basically the sticks, right? Nobody's going to worry if Chicago goes up in flames. It burned down once a couple hundred years ago. Like, what's the big deal? So they're
So
probably like, as long as he's way far away from headquarters, so.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
he's also
but
positioned
Edinburgh
next to
probably
the
be okay
tactical
with
nuke
London.
out in the middle of the water.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like either way. So it's like, oh, well, we never needed the upper half of North America anyway. That's the big deal.
Right. Yeah.
Stupid Canada.
It's America.
But yeah, I mean, I imagine Langtry knows having the experience with Margaret too. So whatever Harry doesn't know yet about what he was intended for, I have no doubt Langtry knows most of, if not all of that.
Right.
And I'm sure that, I mean, even Morgan says it in the microfiction. I think it's like what he was supposed to be or whatever. And so, fine, you have that fear, but again, so you don't have to necessarily be warm and fuzzy to him, but maybe be the pragmatic geniuses people keep claiming you are with your plan mastery, and don't stab him every time you see him.
Right. Or punch him in the nose.
Whatever.
So
yeah. I mean, if he is going to be this terrible, awesome power that they are afraid could be turned against him, they do want him to choose to defend them. And being as an asshole as much as Morgan was, certainly did not make me care until like we got to see him turncoat and Morgan actually showed vulnerability. It's like, okay, now I can care about this guy, but
you still made
too little, too late
choices.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I was on board with them after that. It was the microfiction that was like, again, oh, you make me hate him again now. I liked him now.
Yeah. I mean, Morgan's one of my sleeper favorites for sure, but that's because like I prefer people to be direct with me, right? And yes, Morgan's an asshole, but at least I know where he stands, right? I can work with that, and so yeah, hate him, but still at the same time, like he's a minor antagonist at worst, right? But yeah. Anyway. One of the other comments to pivot it just back out to Harry a little bit. So Last of Ruby, I'm assuming is the pronunciation on that, but we hadn't talked about it or touched on so much the fact that it's like, Harry has very known connections to Winter, obviously, but also suspected, compromised by the White Court as well. So that certainly feeds, like we had talked about the fear, but that to me makes it quite justified, right? That most of the council at large, hell, Ebenezer assumes that he's compromised by the White Court. I bet you that's not going to be improved by his forthcoming union, so that's certainly going to be one of those, like, we know better, but obviously the council doesn't. And if you went into a white white council meeting and said, oh no, it's okay, Harry's still one of the good guys and I can prove it, you're going to be in the loony bin. You're going to be that guy that it's like, yes, it's the truth, but it's so contrary to the observable facts that they're just going to think you're a lunatic and be like, oh, somebody got into the magic powder again.
Right.
But
Mab is scary. Mab is our ultimate Darth Vader. And thankfully, she's on our side because of reality. But is that the bit that nobody understands? Is that like that maybe only Ebenezer, Merlin, and the Gatekeeper know?
I'm not even sure if they know it. Right?
I was going to say,
must.
You could give it to Rashid. Everybody else,
yes,
I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Right, but that would be the thing for sure, right? They hope and they want her to be on their side, but for the rest of the White Council, she's just Darth Vader. Right,
this might be the issue of holding secrets, as the wizards are terminally doing, is if they let
how
everyone
would you even prove it? How would you even prove it? What evidence would you bring to bear?
Take them on a field trip to the game.
Yeah, honestly, right. Like, send them through a rotation.
Would Mab show up in the meeting and be like, it's okay, I'm good now? She's not good. She's doing the same job she's done for 1,000 years.
Right, but if
she's
they know
not a good guy.
The ultimate reason, I mean, like, as it was a revelation to all of us, it's like, yeah, this is important. This is why she has to be as she is. And maybe they have ideas as to how she doesn't have to steal children.
Oh, I would bet you that if that happened and they all found out about this, then people like Christos would be like, and why does she have this power and not us?
Right.
That would be the more likely immediate reaction.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Why are we letting this wicked fairy run reality when we, the bastions of magic and knowledge, are sitting right here?
The shit that happened in 1066, of which most of the wizards were not around for, at least current generation.
Presumably, that's a big reach, but okay.
Most, that's all.
Rashid was there, So.
Right. But
probably, maybe.
It was a turning of the power of the entire planet, and the amount of damage that probably caused. Like, do you want to go through that, or do you want to help the person who's defending the gates right now at this very delicate time?
I want to keep secrets and infight. Thank you.
Yeah.
It is like crack to wizards. So
they are humans. And as we've established, humans are morons.
I mean, in this case, like at best, they're amazingly short-sighted, even as wizards, right? Like dudes like, oh, I could be in power for like 100 years. And yes, and 100 after that, reality falls. Mab's not playing that game because you can't blow up reality. That's where she keeps all her stuff. And 100 years from now, she's still going to have to deal with it. So there's just like no chance she's even entertaining that idea.
You exchanged words. She turned around and then you were in the ground from her, from her perspective.
Yeah.
No. Which is why Rashid's probably the only one that has that kind of foresight, and because he's been bouncing around and he's got the job. Which he even says in Cold Days is that the council knows about as little of our jobs as they need to.
As is necessary.
Yeah.
Well, and that was going to be one of the things that, like I was going to bring up about the Merlin as well, right? So like, think about it. Knowledge is power, and sharing all of this knowledge you have is probably as dangerous as walking into a White Council meeting with your fucking staff and your battle wand and just everything else, right? You are demonstrating your capabilities and your knowledge, which makes you just as dangerous as, demonstrating all the evocation magic that right? And so there's loads of shit that they keep to their chests, right? For their own protection as much as for everybody else. Yeah, nobody has a fucking clue what Rashid's doing. Like, maybe the Merlin knows, but I'm not really sold on that. I don't think Ebenezer knows. The Merlin probably knows too much about Ebenezer's job, right? Which is part of why they're at odds,
They were probably at odds before that job, but yes.
Right. Yeah. Like, I think that does go back. I just don't think it was softened any when he got the power to break the laws of magic, so, but.
Well, the other possibility is the Merlin knows just enough to make the wrong conclusions, because there is another word of Jim that says, most all the Merlins try and follow in the original Merlin's footsteps, and very few of them end up doing it, like what he intended and wanted. And it seems like the kind of job where it could easily be like, I know better, and like, well, you know things. You don't necessarily know better.
I'm sure it's a general phrase, but it comes up all the time in IT that it's like you're smart enough or have enough access to be dangerous. That doesn't mean that you're good. That doesn't mean you know enough. You just know enough how to make a big pile of shit for somebody else later, And like, again, the Merlin could have all of the knowledge in the moment, all of the power, all of like the history of what the OG Merlin did. Doesn't necessarily give him the foresight of it, right? Each new Merlin may come in and see themselves as the Merlin of their time, right? They're trying to keep the status quo for the time. They're trying to keep the lid on it just to get us another generation through, or whatever the case may be, get some prosperity going or something like that. But, OG Merlin had a vision, Dude didn't just like show up and be like, you know what? I think we need some laws of magic. Why? Because fuck you. That's why. Like that. I don't get the impression that's what he did. And it's possible I'm giving him too much direction for the few things that we know. Right. But he established the council. I feel like he saw a need. He wanted to bring wizards into the fold. He wanted to give them restrictions so that they weren't dangerous to themselves and to others, right? Because that's as much of what the laws of magic really encompass. All of the laws of magic are like, please don't become a warlock. Also, don't open the gates because that would be bad. Like,
probably
that's the
enough
laws
of
of
that
magic
was
in a nutshell.
Past mistakes on his own.
Sure. Could be.
Plenty of the Merlin story has him kind of like questionable decisions and
right.
But I mean, even all you have to do is look at Carlos and at that end conversation, and what does he know? He knows that the White Court and Winter Court have their hooks into Dresden. He knows that he could be standing there in freezing rain and not look uncomfortable. He knows what the events of the last few hours and days were, and they're all true. But what has that knowledge gotten him? It's not.
Right.
That's not the deeper truth. That's not all of it. So now you multiply that by the leader of the White Council, who's been around for 400 years. What does he know versus what, the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Sure.
Maybe Langtry is the ultimate. I know tomato is a fruit, but I don't know that I shouldn't put it in a fruit salad.
Right. Or even worse. Yeah. One of the other thoughts that I had from that is like, experience comes from making bad mistakes. How many mistakes does Langtry have under his belt that he can point to and be like, fuck, if you only knew the shit that I've done, like with good intentions or, with half the knowledge that I needed or whatever, you would be twice as cautious as you are now. That's for sure. So
I mean, I get the impression that Ebenezer has a lot of those. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Merlin is a little more of the no, I've pretty much made the right call every time.
he is that kind of arrogant where it's like,
well, I think that's why they butted heads. I think that's why they butt heads as much as they do, because Langtry definitely knows he's making the right call, quote unquote, even if he has some private reservations. At a minimum, he knows it because of the figurehead status he has, and I'm pretty sure he knows it also internally too. Is like, no, I know what I'm doing.
Right,
I got this.
How lucky it is that the best and smartest person is the Merlin for the White Council. He says every morning.
It's really convenient that it worked out that way.
Everybody's an idiot but me. Ha.
Do we know how the Merlin is chosen? Is it geriocratically then like
the senior council picks them?
The senior council only and not the council at large?
Yeah, no, the senior council, the word of Jim is the senior council picks from among their own members and the person they think is best suited to, if necessary, like combat all of them should the need arise, quote unquote. So, like he could take on any individual member or even a group effort in a fight.
Okay, so they chose Langtry, supposedly they at the time, thinking that he was more powerful than any one of them, at least in a public knowledge of what everyone's power is. I assume everyone's keeping their true power aside, but that does kind of square with what we saw at the end of Turncoat when the Death Stone, whatever the fuck it was called, was running loose, and he immediately had everyone coordinated because it's like the telepathic communication, and that is extremely important if you're going to go after a mad wizard. If you have 5 other wizards on your side, you do need them to be like attacking the same person and at the right times.
Yeah, Mordate.
I mean, but yeah. he's got the warding and the defensive capabilities too. That's been talked about a bunch. There's another word to Jim about how, well, Ancient Mai's older. Why isn't she the Merlin? And it's like, well, she doesn't see herself suited to the role of leadership in the same way. So that is a factor. You have to have the political capital too.
Yeah, people recuse themselves, and just be like, it can be between the 3 of you or whatever, where, I mean, she's an artificer. What's she going to do? Sick the dogs on him? So, but
yeah,
maybe. I mean, they could have an army of mech dogs. That's cool too.
Ancient Mai shows up in a battle mech and Ancient battle mech. She's
a tiny little old lady. She can have a battle suit to defend herself. Right. This is great.
Right. I am here to be the Merlin. So,
wonder if she regrets not being the Merlin.
I doubt it.
Yeah. I mean, probably a good grip of them don't even want the headache, like, so, like, I could see her being practical enough to just be like, nah, I don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, how many years did Ebenezer turn down a senior council position, let alone fucking leading the whole thing?
Right.
Even though he then decided, well, we're going to make our own council with blackjack and hookers, kind of.
Right.
You think Langtry knows about Ebenezer's and his great council?
I go back and forth with that because to me, I have a feeling it's going to come out he does. I don't think it makes that much sense because I think it's too big of a political risk to be in the know about that, and not immediate. Like having him around as a fall guy, quote unquote, is fine, but at the same time, it's like that's a big risk, and he's averse to that kind of shit. Like it's one thing when he's pointing a stupid wizard out in the middle of chicken pizza, but right there at home is.
Think about the reaction to the Black Council though too, right? Like Morgan immediately says there's no war in Ba Sing Se, right? If anybody so much as says the word black, before getting to council. And so it's just like, I could have taken it further, but yeah, I figured that was enough. So no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it just like, it's such a knee-jerk reaction. So is it Merlin is lying to everybody because he can't let the word get out? Are they properly that much in denial that there is a Black Council? I can't think he's that stupid, but just that he is worried about fear getting out into the general wizard populace and that sort of thing. And maybe he does know about the Grey Council, but as soon as they get found out, again, they could be a useful tool for him or something. But as soon as they get found out, it'd be like, oh, look, we found the Black Council. Turns out they were real the whole time, and he throws them under the bus, right?
It's also a risk, though, at how many people would join it, and then you basically have another de facto Christos faction on your hand, where it's like, no, I'm going to go over here with these guys because they got whiskey. It's cool,
right?
I mean, you'd hope Edinburgh would have whiskey. It's fucking Scotland.
They got better whiskey.
Yes,
right. Well, Ebenezer's Scottish, so it's all his collection over the last 350 years or so.
Ooh, I want to know what that is.
Right. Probably all mead at this point.
The fact that Morgan clearly knew of there's some amount of traitors, but was vehemently denying it. I think that Langtry is probably doing the same thing, maybe with a bit more class. But right, if they can't acknowledge that the Black Council exists, they probably can't acknowledge that the Grey Council exists because it's giving rise to some form of subterfuge. But the propaganda machine is a real force, and if you're constantly denying something that other people can see is real, they're going to start thinking that you're an idiot, and then they'll go find out what they want anyway, and they won't trust you, and blah blah blah.
Well, luckily a Titan came along and distracted everyone. So
right,
because I mean, Ebenezer and Harry had this conversation at the end of Turncoat. It's like, no, Langtry probably knows better. It's just, what if people decide they want to join the Black Council? Better to. Whereas I think Morgan was actually more fanatical about, no, this absolutely cannot possibly be the case. Versus Langtry was like, yeah, no, that would never happen.
But we're just going to allow them to go do their own thing and destroy the Red Court.
Well, that's the great, but that's different. So. It's just a matter of whether or not Bigfoot was there, and we just didn't know at the time. Because why not? Because he seems to know more than he knows what a Starborn is, too. This, that, and the other thing.
He's been around for what, like 10,000 years?
Oh, he's been around long enough to be Lysan's to Wind's teacher at a minimum. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think they put him at around 1,000. Didn't they? Or
is that all? Okay. I thought he went back to like the land bridge or something like that, and there's something about like the Genisqua where like, the first children or something. What, wasn't that a thing?
Maybe. I don't know.
Children
encyclopedia.
So.
Come on, do the encyclopedia thing.
Huh? Let me find the quote.
Yeah, because they did describe the like coming over the ice and the cold.
I think he said he was young for his age too. Or
that's
for
true.
His people or whatever it was.
Right. So how old he is versus how old the normal lifespan is.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
So I know that Jim has said something about the Merlins previously, like the one before Langtry was like a woman, or maybe it was the one before that one. It was like, I don't know how many Merlins they have had since the inception of the White Council. That one. Too many colors. They're all the same. Councils versus courts. But we've had like at least a handful, right, of like 5 to 7 or so since the original. And if all of them are trying to hold up to some form of ideal, well, that's kind of convenient if they are actually holding the ideal and not like, oh, now I'm in power and we're going to change everything. Why are they all status quo? Is it just because they're old wizards and they don't change? Or is there perhaps something more significant, something more mantle-like, something to bind them in their actions?
No. Okay, no.
Come on,
no, that's going to be a no.
They have robes and everything.
Okay, there's a reason. There is a reason, but it doesn't have to be a mantle. Not everything is a mantle, right? I think you're closer to the mark with them being like old, stodgy wizards, right? And that sort of thing. But I think the more important part is that they're old, right? And think about the time periods that, Langtry has lived through, right? If we're saying that he was a young wizard in the French and Indian War, that means he's also lived through 2 world wars, and you know what changing the status quo gets you for that sort of thing. And so, and not to mention the fact that I'm sure they just about had a wizard civil war at each of those points, right? Because they talk about that potentially being some of the source between Ebenezer and Langtry going back to the French and Indian War. Imagine what that looked like in World War One, when you've got like 20 different groups of wizards trying to vie for their individual country or sit it out so that they don't stir the boat. And then you got World War II, where you basically probably a big part of what kept them intact then is because they're running around dealing with Kemmler. And Kemmler was the real secret big threat. Is like, the whole thing with Kemmler just strikes me so much as like basically magical Red Skull, right? Where it's like they're just running around behind the scenes during World War II trying to stop this mad wizard who is literally raising mass undead armies and that sort of thing, right? So they were probably distracted then. Not sure if they had something going on in World War One, but it's like geopolitics shouldn't be ignored either, because some of these wizards don't see themselves just as wizards. They also see themselves as the French or Italians, Polish, whatever. Imagine World War II during the appeasement, and people are just rolling over, and you've got a couple of British wizards being like, no, I think this is the right call. We should definitely cede land, and then maybe he'll be whatever. And it's like, bitch, that is my homeland on fire while you're sitting here talking appeasement, So I'm sure like the don't rock the boat, keep the status quo stuff is definitely just a pragmatic, like let's be safe and that sort of thing.
And it all goes back to, again, the word of Jim about, most of them are trying to live up to what they think the Merlin's ideal is. So if you have those at least general guiding principles, you're staying within a vague line.
Personally, I don't think they know him, because apparently
they don't apparently know them properly,
and saving books out of a burning building and starting the White Council was also within his character. I don't think they're doing enough drinking and fighting, if you ask me.
Well, no, that's again, but that's the other part of it is most of them aren't living up to it. It's like, okay, so they know, but again, knowledge and wisdom. What's the difference?
Well, yeah, they're probably thinking of like retired Merlin or established Merlin rather than the Merlin who actually got shit done. Like who did so what did he do? He stole the walking stick, he played cards for Edinburgh. Like, it's just like, let's go down the list. You guys have a lot to live up to.
The Library of Alexandria, helped found the Catholic Church, I believe, is one of them.
Right.
Assembled the council proper as opposed to whatever proto stuff it was beforehand.
Running around with King Arthur and Mab at some point.
Yep.
Yeah. Set down the laws of magic. So they got some room to grow, man.
Established Demon Rage and then disappeared.
Right. And then effed off, never to be heard or seen from again. So Langtry, all he's done is cut off the heads of a bunch of teenagers. Like,
no,
really not the same.
He had Morgan do it. He didn't even do it himself.
Okay. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. We know how that works in the medieval things. His vassal, his lieutenant did it.
I'm just saying he didn't get his hands dirty. It's not a matter of it's not his responsibility. It's a matter of he couldn't even bother to get his hands dirty.
Okay, so he's effectively done nothing then
Right.
Order the murder of a bunch of kids.
Correct.
So, yeah.
He ate sandwiches. We did see that.
Very domestic of him.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know much about I don't know enough about history at all, but I don't know much about the French and Indian War. And so apparently the dates are 1754 to 1763. 63. So I also imagine that they might have, Ebenezer and Langtry have been on the opposite sides of each other, say the Revolutionary War, where also geopolitics were reshaping in large amounts. And then Ebenezer is conveniently living in Missouri, right? The Ozarks. He is now an American, and the filthy English, but granted the Scots connection is still also the filthy English that they hate so much. And let's see, the thing that Langtry says, the root and branch in changes, that's a very specific phrase that comes out of the massacre of Glencoe, which was the equivalent of the Scottish Red Wedding, I'll say, just to do it really short, but it was a horrible betrayal and a lot of people died. And that was specifically the orders that was given by the English of you will eradicate them root and branch. So I don't think it is a mistake or an accident that Langtry used the same words. And that is also how he thinks, like, eradicate the threat in its entirety, which kind of goes back to it's the first, the second, and the ace in the hole tactic.
And fuck the Scots.
But he's also British. He's also, like old British, and it just makes sense that the Scottish guy and the British guy aren't going to get along. So
very bad.
Yeah.
So in the BAT, he's going to once more into the breach, dear friends, before like jumping into the portal to the outside.
Langtry, you want me to think that he's going to have a noble sacrifice, so
listen.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
what the author would do?
He'll raise up a wall of force, and then he'll touch it and be like, "You have been and always will be my friend," and then sorry, different nerd reference, but.
So which name is Dresden going to scream out at the end? Mab! Just for some reason.
Right. Yeah. Nicodemus is too many syllables.
It's got to be.
Yeah. Something
Mac.
short and
no,
sweet.
Mac. There you go. He's Mac. And Mac is going to bring him a steak sandwich.
He's been the secret sleeper agent the whole time. That son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Clever little bastard.
Who knew?
He's out, but he was thrown out. That's the part we didn't understand.
For being too extreme for the outsiders.
Right. So.
Funny. I mean, not, but still.
It's good for the memes.
Yeah. So. And that's what's really important is memes.
And what the author
at the end of the day, I mean.
It's in his style.
Yeah. All of life is a meme.
Yeah.
And what's the Shakespeare quote? All the world's a stage and all the players something. I don't know.
Are a meme.
I don't like Shakespeare. Yeah, but that's the gist of it. Are a meme. And all the players upon it are a meme.
Are you saying it's memes all the way down?
It always root and branch.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's a new disturbing one that I'd like to not catch, I guess, So.
Listen, some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
Aren't you so proud of yourself?
That's true.
Although this reminds me, I just have to say on the show that people actually watch, Ben is Afraid of Oogie Boogie. He did not get away with that.
Oh, good point. I forgot that.
God.
Exactly. I
definitely want to know. I want to know the age, like where this kicked in, because I think I was a teenager before I saw it the first time. So I was just like,
how old is he now? Because I'm pretty sure it was a year ago that it kicked in.
Yeah, right. So we'll have to bypass whatever his Secret Santa list is this year and just send him
like an Oogie Boogie beanie bag or something.
Yeah.
This is great.
Just find one made out of a sack. I'm sure on Etsy you can find one that's just like legit.
It's got to be loaded with, and there's got to be one that you can make where you like load it with gummy worms and shit.
Exactly.
Sure. If not, I can. If you screw that up, it's not really screwed up because of the aesthetic, right? So it's just like anybody could pull that off, but I think it needs to happen.
Whoever gets him for Secret Santa this year, you have an assignment.
Ignore his list and just get him a beanbag of Oogie Boogie filled with
gummy worms. Hold on, I'm writing this down.
Important things happening here.
Right.
He's going to be like, what? This wasn't on my list. It's like, well, clearly you don't watch the Dresden Files podcast anymore because
right.
We told you this was going to happen about a month and a half ago.
Right. Not some comic book villain. This was in the works a month and a half ago.
What was the line from
Butcher
Hitchhiker's
that quote
Guide? Like
twice,
the plans were on the wall and have been for like 2 months, but down
Yes.
in a basement that no one could reach.
It's not our fault you couldn't be bothered to go down to the local municipality. So no point complaining to me.
Pretty much.
Bureaucracy. Everything works out great. Do we have any more thoughts about Langtry today? Because I'm sure we'll have more in the future.
I mean, probably. Like, I don't know. Like, I was going to say, what was he like as a kid? No, I'm just kidding. But
more insufferable.
Yeah, right? He'd probably be the annoying nerd of like, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. Yeah.
He did all of his homework. So
he definitely worked.
Or was he? Yeah. What was Harry's dad's name? Like Harry Potter in this case?
Oh,
no.
James.
I was gonna say Ben because I'm stuck on Ben apparently, but yeah. So he was the jock. He was always the guy like bumping elbows and just generally being a jerk, and then settled down into the pragmatic guy who's trying to fuck you over 3 ways from Sunday. So
yeah, just different tactics.
Right. Okay. So in 2 weeks we'll talk about more. Yeah. We're doing the Westerns next week.
Yes.
For while we weren't
recording. Are we doing Westerns next week? Good for us.
Yes, for the 12th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get to watching.
Wait, I thought we were doing a month for that.
No, because we only did 5 this time. So we can watch that in 2 weeks, but now you only have 1 week. So watch 5. And we need to make fun of Andreas because he hadn't put something on the list yet.
Oh my goodness. It might have to be a couple more.
I was going to say now it's going to have to be a month.
Just constantly make fun of him is probably the answer.
Maybe he's out watching a Western right now, which is still not a good excuse.
Actually be impressive if he was watching a Western to be able to put on the list and say, okay, this is the one I'm going to stand by.
Right.
It's going to be terrible, but it's the only Western he knows.
As opposed to somebody who put movies he hadn't even seen on the list.
Yeah,
what a joke that was. So,
and we all regret that. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
Who, me?
Yes.
Yeah, you.
One movie.
It
was both of them.
So it was bad.
Yeah, I forget which one it was in the past, but I had definitely been tempted. I was like, oh, I need to see this movie anyway. I should put it on the list. And I'm like, no. Yeah. Can't do that. So.
But I mean,
picking it in ignorance is better than picking it intentionally, knowing everyone's going to hate it.
That is true. But there's levels of badness here. But there's like, you can let other people give you something that you don't know, that you haven't seen. And you can make sure that the movie that you pick yourself is the one that you will enjoy in whatever the assignment is.
That's why I picked Tombstone, because it's delightful.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tombstone's going to be really easy to get into for a lot of people. Super excited to watch True Grit again. Just classics. So even though I did the remake, I think it's close enough. So
yeah. I mean, I chose a remake too. And of course, Ben chose the one from 1952.
You're going to have to narrow it down because there's a bunch for that.
It was High Noon.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. Damn.
It's one of the classics of Westerns. And so it just, it's predictable. You kind of gave him the permission to do so. In fact, I think Ichi did tell him to do so.
No, I told him to pick Gunsmoke.
I thought you said
which is a TV show. And that would have taken us a very long time.
Yeah. 310 to Yuma's is yours, huh? I haven't seen that one either, but it'll be an excuse to watch it. So
it's good. I mean, I've only seen it once, but I really enjoyed it. So this is my excuse to watch it again.
Andres is going to pick Unforgiven because he's just going to look at a list.
Probably.
Or Back to the Future Part 3. Either way.
Yes. We dodged a bullet with those, right? It was going to be Serenity, Back to the Future Part 3, like just a bunch of like, these got Westerns in them, right?
I was going to say at least Back to the Future Part 3 is in the Old West.
Right.
We don't have to make like a pseudo argument about how Serenity is a space Western.
Right. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do more experimental Westerns following, and so Ben can choose Serenity. And
there you go. That's the second one. We'll do Mask of Zorro, Serenity, because these all came up, right? So
I'm just supposed to talk about Mask of Zorro. If he chooses that, whatever, we'll see. But we have to
pick
actually
good
make
movies
him put on
and
the
pick
list.
Serenity and Mask of Zorro. Can't that be the topic?
What topic is that? Just good movies?
Just
so
good
broad.
movies that are fun to watch.
Right. Careful, one of those is Joss Whedon, so
Oh my god.
Well,
all right, we did it.
Yeah.
We almost made it the whole episode talking about our actual topic.
Almost.
I know.